Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thank you for listening to Your Working Life, my podcast series featuring thought leaders in the career and personal growth arena. I know that you spend a significant portion of your life at work, so my goal is to provide you with tools, inspiration, and resources so you can enjoy your career and love your life. And I am delighted to welcome a very special guest to the show today, Melissa Greenwell. Melissa, welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Well, thank you, Caroline. I'm very happy to be here.
I am too, and we're going to dive into a juicy conversation about your book, but I want to tell our global listening audience a bit more about you. Melissa Greenwell is the author of Money on the Table: How to Increase Profits Through Gender-Balanced Leadership. She is the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the national retailer The Finish Line. And you can learn more about Melissa at her website, melissa-greenwell.com. So, Melissa, let's dive right in. So, lots of diversity and inclusion programs out in the world today, but the reality is women are still a rarity in this C-suite and boardrooms. Why? And are we moving the needle at least a little bit?
Well, Caroline, we are moving the needle a little bit, but we are moving it still all too slowly. Yeah. And really the reason why we still don't have more women in senior leadership and on boards is simply because of the pipeline of talent. Lots of women are still leaving corporate America about the time they hit middle management, manager, director level, which does coincide with around the time they are starting families. But, you know, a lot of organizations would choose to believe that they are leaving the workforce to stay home and care for family. The reality is that's simply not true. They are choosing to work differently, not choosing not to work. And so they're starting their own businesses or going to work for organizations that offer more flexibility.
And that's why I'm fascinated by your new book, which is called Money on the Table. And you say that this lack of gender balance at the top is really costing companies money. Tell me more.
Well, it is, because women and men think differently. Our brains work differently. We respond to challenges differently. We solve problems differently. And when you just have one gender in the room, be that male or female, you're just not getting your best thinking and your best problem solving. So we're not developing the best products and solutions for customers and clients.
And I so agree. It's about diversity of thought, right? And the way that women and men approach communication, problem solving, developing solutions is different. And I think that diversity of thought only makes teams stronger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, having people from diverse cultures and backgrounds, you know, that also enables us to approach problems from different points of view. But there are some common threads in terms of the way the genders think differently that is important also.
So you mentioned in the book that 46% of entry-level jobs are held by women, and we see that at the university level too, because it's really a 50-50 split for women and men at university, which is encouraging because those numbers were different even a decade ago. But the figure drops to 14% by the time that women get to the C-suite. So where are these women going? You mentioned some are taking a hiatus to raise families, but not all.
No, and in fact, not the majority. More small businesses and new businesses are started in the United States every year by women versus men. Many women are starting their own companies, their own consulting firms, you know, or they're going to work for organizations that have different philosophies and think differently about providing flexible work environments.
Yeah.
And the organizations that are doing that are seeing an increase in productivity.
And I think the flexibility factor is a value for so many in the workforce. And frankly, that translates into productivity, efficiency, gratification on the part of the people working, and it can raise the bottom dollar for the organization.
Right, absolutely. One of the CEOs that I interviewed for the book recognized that the women who worked for him worked at different hours, maybe off business hours.
Right.
And he noted that these women were very productive. They did not like to waste time because, every hour was very valuable to them in terms of trying to manage multiple priorities around work and family or anything else for that matter. So he firmly recognized that women are very productive, especially when you can afford some flexibility and enable them to work when they work best.
Love it. So, Melissa, you're such a solution provider, and in the book, Money on the Table, you lay out very specific steps that companies need to take to retain and attract female talent. So tell me about some of these things that businesses can do to increase that pipeline.
Well, first of all, I think companies need to start thinking differently about how they can provide more flexible work environments. And this really isn't just important to attract and retain female talent. I believe that it's also important to attract and retain millennial talent. We're seeing more and more that millennial men are also interested in having a more flexible work environment. Our businesses are 24/7. And so it's really impossible for anyone anymore that's working in a competitive environment to work inside the confined hours of, 8 to 5 or 8 to 6. And so this is an important topic to attract and retain the best talent, period. But it becomes even more important for women as they're moving through their careers and starting families.
And what about working remotely? That can actually be a cost saver for an organization.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can save on real estate. You can save on office space. You can save on furniture. I mean, there are lots of big savings by enabling people to work remotely.
And I know, Melissa, that you're a fan of mentoring, as am I, and sponsorship. What makes a mentor program really work? Because the concept is brilliant. However, it doesn't always work, and it's not always scalable in an organization.
So mentoring is very important within our organization, and we do have that process formalized to some degree. We find that it has perpetuated people to reach out to connect to mentors on their own. But we really believe that it's the responsibility of all of our executives to mentor high potential talent and high potential female talent. So we work very hard to pair up high potential female talent with executive mentors and, base that upon some criteria. Perhaps it's a particular part of the business that they're interested in learning more about. Perhaps it's something, from a behavioral standpoint or a leadership standpoint that we think a particular executive would be, more helpful to them versus another. So we try to be really thoughtful about that. But, my advice to the women that I coach is that when it comes to picking a mentor, you should really do that with purpose. And you should first identify the things that you want to work on, and then identify other people that you think are really good at that, and seek those people out as mentors. And so you're not just picking someone for the sake of picking someone, but it's with purpose.
Excellent. Any thoughts on women mentoring other women, or do you see men mentoring women? Any thoughts on that?
I think all of that is important, and I think it's really important for women to bring other women along. So there's no need to compete. There's only a need to pull each other up along with us. And so I really think that it's important for women to mentor other women. It doesn't matter if you're a senior executive, a middle manager, or even just a professional that's been out of college for a few years and you're mentoring other, female graduates. I mean, this works all the way through the pipeline.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for women to help other women as well.
I see. I've always appreciated your writing about the rules for women and how we need to take responsibility for driving our own change. And you really have articulated some extraordinary rules. Tell us a little bit more about those and also some mistakes that women make when they're undermining their own advancement and promotion.
Yeah. Well, my very first rule is speak first. And I really do think that if I had to pick one rule that's most important of all 10, that probably would be the one. I think women grow up learning to be very polite, and we're not supposed to interrupt others, and we're supposed to wait to be invited to speak or invited to take a particular opportunity. And I think women really have to speak up and raise their hand for opportunities. Sometimes, in meetings, particularly if it's a male-dominated environment, you have to interrupt people to be heard, because there's nothing worse than having a good thought and not having the opportunity to share it. And oftentimes that is the mistake that women make, is that they wait for everyone else to say something and then they decide to share their idea. But by that time, often it's too late, and so they're never heard. And that does not do anything to help them build their own confidence and to help them be recognized as thought leaders.
Love it. Courage to be seen and heard. Yeah. What I love in the book is you point out that many countries are really taking an active role in increasing the gender balance. I'd love to hear more about some of those strategies, and tell us, are these being implemented in the U.S. as well?
Well, Europe is still leading the pack in terms of their effort towards having more women in senior leadership and on boards. And various countries are taking various approaches. Some are doing it via sort of the recognition and the certification system. So they will recognize companies and sort of give them the government stamp of approval in terms of, those organizations taking initiative. Others have mandated step changes and percentages of women on boards and set goals around that. Others have created public company reporting requirements. So they have to report what their goals are, what their policies are relative to gender diversity, and what their status is. And so it's all out there in the open. In the United States, it's a little bit different. So the SEC says that public companies must have a diversity policy, but there's no specific framework required for that. So you don't necessarily have to report what that strategy is. You don't have to report what your percentage of female versus male executives are, or board members. So I believe we're a little bit behind when it comes to implementing requirements that would actually have U.S. companies change their behaviors a little faster.
So lots of opportunity there. Melissa, I love that you interviewed so many women CEOs and senior leaders in the book. Did you see a common theme or thread for their wisdom and advice?
Well, I absolutely did. And that common thread was that the female executives I interviewed were willing to work a lot harder than other groups of people to have more gender diversity on their teams. So they weren't so willing to accept that the only candidates they could find were male. And I also want to give credit to the male CEOs and executives who have also taken that approach. And I talk about that group of people in the book as well. In general, the executive leaders who are getting more females on their teams and on boards are the ones that are simply not willing to accept that there aren't any female candidates out there. They're digging deeper, they're taking more time with their searches, and they're reaching outside their typical comfortable network.
That's encouraging. Very encouraging. So, Melissa, as we wrap up, what about you? You have earned your way to a pinnacle position at the top of the corporate world. Can you distill one particular lesson that you would like to leave the audience with today?
Well, I would say one is that you have to be persistent, and you have to ask for opportunities. If you want more responsibility, if you want to do more, you have to let people know that. You can't always wait to be invited, and you can't always wait until you're 110% ready, which is what women tend to do. If I had done those things, then I'm pretty certain I wouldn't have the opportunity that I have today.
Melissa, you've been incredible. I'm so grateful that you shared your wisdom and your expertise today. That the new book is Money on the Table, How to Increase Profits Through Gender-Balanced Leadership. Tell us how we can buy the book. It's going to be ready in just a few weeks in time for the launch of the show. And how can we follow you online?
Yes, fantastic. So the book will be available January 3rd on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Goodreads. It's also on my website now, available now at melissa-greenwell.com. And I'd love for folks to follow me on Twitter as we get this campaign launched, and that's Mel_Greenwell.
Fantastic. Melissa, thank you so much. I wish you continued success, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you so much, Carolyn.
You're welcome. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in to Your Working Life, where my goal is to help you design your career destiny so it doesn't happen by default. Career and life satisfaction is possible, and it's time to embrace what you love doing so you can do more of it. The show is now available on iTunes, YouTube, Podbean, and Stitcher. Leave a comment because I always appreciate hearing from my listeners. I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Take good care.